last night I did a video that I was not in any way expecting to do this year or even next year or not for many, many years down the road, where I announced to the YouTube channel, to the people, to you guys, the passing of Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama. And, you know, I did the video just to get the news out there so that everybody knew it wasn't a hoax, so that everybody knew, like, this is a real story. Because when somebody says so and so passes away, there's that instant moment of denial, and it could lead to fights. And the one thing I did not want is I did not want friends fighting each other over something that they weren't sure about. But it came from the official Dragon Ball website in Japan. And, I did the video. It's a short video. It was not a long video. I did not know what to say because I literally recorded it moments after I found out. I was in so much shock, and I didn't know what to do. I had made plans with a friend who was in town for one day last night. Otherwise, I would have probably done a stream and given more in-depth thoughts. But when I did the video, I didn't really know what to say. I mean, how do you react to something like that? Honestly, right now I'm recording this video at 7:27 in the morning on the East Coast. I just hit the record button. This is not going to be scripted, obviously, but I'm going to talk about, like, how I feel about this now that it's been a few hours. And I think I'm still processing it. This was unexpected. I think we can all kind of agree to that, because 68 is way too young. It is, 68 is way too young to die. It just is. My father passed away at 70. And that was too young, I felt. And 68's even younger than that. And when I did the video, I just basically recorded it, uploaded it. I didn't put any tags or any search engine optimization. I didn't care about any of that stuff. This video was not made to be found or whatever. It was just made to get the information out there, to make sure you knew it wasn't a hoax. You make sure you knew it wasn't a lie or some fake rumor. Because when a celebrity dies, people immediately think it's BS. There's a lot of fake news when it comes to Dragon Ball stuff out of Japan. We hear things, that aren't true. In fact, there was a hoax about Toriyama dying many, many years ago. Some of you remember that. That also was not true. But with this video, I want to kind of give my thoughts on what Toriyama has meant to me. And like I said, I'm not scripting this, but this is going to be 100% from the heart, how I feel. Obviously, you don't have to even know me personally to understand what Toriyama's work has meant for my life. And not just my life as in like my career, but my life overall. Dragon Ball has bonded me with a lot of friends going back to when I was a kid. Going back to when I was a middle schooler going into high school. Because everybody loved Dragon Ball. When I was in high school, everyone loved Dragon Ball. I went to a high school that was really right outside the hood. A lot of Hispanics were there, including myself. And everyone loved Dragon Ball. I mean, it didn't matter what your gender was, your ethnicity. It didn't matter what your background was, whether you were a jock or even an anime fan. It didn't matter. Dragon Ball sort of transcended what anime was, because a lot of it having to do with how Toriyama designed this universe. Because unlike other Japanese manga, Dragon Ball exists in its own universe that's not Japan. You watch a lot of other anime, they take place in Tokyo or in some kind of alternate universe Tokyo. Tokyo does not exist in Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is a fictional world that is based on our world as far as architecture goes and clothing and civilizations and even some of the animals, but it's its own thing. It's like the futuristic past. It's got dinosaurs and spaceships, technology, but also rural areas. It's a big hodgepodge of stuff. And even if you've never been to this channel before, just looking at the body of work on here, almost 3,000 videos, and about 98% are about Dragon Ball. You know, I've had people ask me, "Are going to do a tribute?" And I haven't. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, because I was going to stream today, but I think I kind of just want to do this video for today. I don't know if I want to stream. I don't. I'm still scheduled to stream tomorrow on Twitch some old Dragon Ball episodes, and I should still do it. I don't know yet. I'm still kind of. This is still something I'm still kind of processing, you know, and it's not the first time I've experienced loss in my life. I've had loved ones pass away. My parents passed away. I have had my older brother pass away. You know, this is not something that is necessarily new, but this one's different because this is a person whom I shared with not a small number of people, a large number of people. Obviously, I didn't know Toriyama personally. You guys, you didn't know him either. We weren't neighbors to Toriyama. We weren't seeing him. He didn't even do interviews outside of written text interviews. You understand? He did one interview in the 80s on a television show. So, it's not like we really knew about the man's sort of day-to-day thoughts. But we did know his work. And Dragon Ball has inspired so many people. Dr. Slump, prior to Dragon Ball, entertained people for years. Dragon Ball has, when that came out, just took it to the next level. And people have gotten through fitness journeys. They've gotten through depressive episodes. They've gotten through, you know, sad moments, breakups because of this show. If it wasn't for Dragon Ball, I would not be where I'm at today. And I mean that in a very deep way. I met a lot of people through Dragon Ball, not just those friends I mentioned in high school, many of which I still know and speak to this day, but also, obviously, the people I met through the Geekdom 101 YouTube channel. And there's a lot of people, man. It's a lot of people. And, you know, we've had our ups and downs. I'm man enough to admit that I haven't been the most perfect citizen. I'm man enough to admit that. But ultimately, this kind of brought us all back together. Over and over again, I felt. You know? And the thing I like about Dragon Ball is that Dragon Ball teaches us that it's okay not to be perfect. Look at the story of Goku, Kakarot. Goku was not a super elite. He was a cast-off. He was a low-level warrior who nobody thought could ever be important. And he winds up saving the world multiple times. The universe. In some instances. And look at the character of Vegeta. A person who came from a very damaged past. A guy who has all kinds of trauma. And throughout the span of Dragon Ball Z, changed. Slowly, but he changed. And Vegeta's character resonates with a lot of people. You've got your Goku fans, your Vegeta fans, your Gohan fans. All these characters have their own story, and we can relate to them in different ways. I just love the whole product. Everything from the design of the characters to the universe to the fights. Toriyama was such a brilliant man to take so many different things. Dinosaurs, science fiction, world building, exploration, treasure hunting, martial arts, combat, comedy. Very few franchises actually have all of that encompassed into one to where it's executed to where it all makes sense. You understand what I'm saying? And it all fits together nicely. And when I say make sense, I don't mean that there's no plot holes or logic holes. That's not what I mean. What I mean is make sense as far as it all works. You can believe that there are giant dinosaurs chasing Gohan. You can believe there are capsule devices where you can hide entire vehicles inside of them. You can believe these things because it's sort of this imaginary world of everything that a young kid could love, right? Dragon Ball always had this youthful spirit. Always, always. Even when Goku grew up into Z, still kept that childlike innocence. You know, Toriyama took Journey to the West and just completely like made it his own. But my story with Toriyama doesn't begin with Dragon Ball. My story begins with Dragon Quest. Because before I discovered Dragon Ball, my older brother, who's also no longer with us, he introduced me to Dragon Warrior on Nintendo when I was 5 years old. Actually, I may have been 4. One of those two. And that was my first, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know who he was, but that was my first exposure to what Toriyama art would be. And I love Dragon Quest. I love it. Dragon Quest is like, I've talked about this before. You should know by now how much I love that franchise, that video game franchise. And then later, of course, I discovered Dragon Ball. And then after that's when I went around looking for more stuff that he did. Like some of the one-shots that he put out. Like Dr. Slump. And I got to really understand his method of entertainment. Toriyama was ultimately a comedian, a gag manga writer. It just so happened that he knew how to draw really good fight scenes and really cool characters. That was his talent. That was his gift from God. He knew how to create these characters and these worlds, and even into Dragon Ball Super. Look, Dragon Ball Super had a lot of flaws. I've talked about them, you've talked about them, but with Dragon Ball Super, those designs, they might not have all been perfect or to our liking, but the concept of having these multiverses and these different tiers of gods, and there's a lot of creativity. He still had some creative juices left over. He still did. And so I grew up with this man. Like, I grew up, even though I didn't know him, even though I never spoke to him verbally one-on-one, not that I could because I don't speak Japanese well enough to, but I, digested Dragon Ball so much. And when I think about doing things like a video tribute, the thing about this YouTube channel is that I feel like almost every video I put out, especially the ones that do research and, the ones that require more editing, they're all little tributes to Toriyama. And they're little sort of examples so that people kind of understand him and understand what he was trying to say, because I know that sometimes it's not that easy. I understand that sometimes these concepts are not that difficult, or I'm sorry, not that simple to understand because it's a different language. There's translation issues. There's also dub changes and things that have confused fans throughout the years. And I thought that I came along at the right time to do the best I could to make it so that they understood. Dragon Ball was such a great combination of everything I loved. Like, I loved karate movies before I discovered Dragon Ball. Science fiction. I liked all that stuff, man. Dragon Ball just kind of put it all together in a different package. Toriyama was a real creative dude, man. And, I've had this strange feeling all night. I mean, I've gotten maybe half an hour sleep because I've just been thinking about this. Because I did not think this was going to happen. It wasn't like, I didn't think the man was immortal, obviously, but he was still younger. I thought it was going to happen many years more down the road. And one of the crazy things is that Nozawa, who's in her 80s, is still alive. And I think a lot of us in the fandom have been worried about her passing. And there were comments yesterday from so many people in the industry, animators, other manga writers, the authors of Naruto and One Piece. Toyotaro made comments. Chris Sabat and other voice actors made comments. Animators like Shida. People like Koyama made a comment. Like, people who have worked with this man for years. Yuji Horii, the storyline developer and creator of Dragon Quest, he commented. He's been working with Toriyama for, God, since the mid 80s. You know? This is like a long relationship. And this has been covered. This story's been covered on like Time Magazine's been covering it. Like this is a major deal. And it really does remind me of when Stan Lee passed away. Stan Lee wrote and created comics with many characters that by the time he passed away had become household names. Even though Toriyama was a manga writer who did very little work on anything outside the manga, he consulted on some anime stuff and drew some stuff for the movies, but he didn't actually animate. He just drew his manga and, traded notes with the creators. And it really wasn't until Daima that he was actually supervising scripts and looking over stuff. But with the original foundation, which is the manga, and then everything else, the anime, the video games, the movies, all the ever-encompassing Dragon Ball, the card games, the art, there's so much to this franchise, the merchandise, it just exploded. And I find it hard to believe that unless we're talking about like a really, really young person or a really, really old person, even if you are just a casual nerd or a casual geek, you know who Goku is. Even if you've never seen a single episode of Dragon Ball, you know who that is. You've seen him around. You've seen the spiky haired guy around with the cool, martial arts gi, riding a cloud. You've seen it. It's literally iconic. I think Mario, Pokemon, Godzilla, and Dragon Ball are like the four most iconic things to come out of Japan as far as overseas and how it hit all over the place. Because let me tell you, Latin America, Brazil, South America, Europe, other parts of Asia, Africa, everyone knows Goku. Everyone knows Dragon Ball. They know Godzilla. As far as things that are culturally in Japan, there are other things that are up there, but Dragon Ball is one of those, like, I guess you can call it one of the Mount Rushmores of Japanese products that really hit everywhere. Everybody mourns differently. I've had friends that have cried. I've had other friends that have, some friends have cried and not told me. Some straight up have. I've had friends that have just been very silent. My mourning for this one is weird because I'm still processing it. I have this feeling in my gut, of like this sort of feeling of like nausea. Like I wanted to puke a few hours ago. And the thing about Toriyama is it's not like we saw him on like a daily basis. He wasn't like an athlete that we see, playing NBA all day, or every day. It's not like a guy who's a newscaster who we see all the time. He's a secluded man. He was a man who really appreciated his privacy. He was a man who did not like the public eye, did not like the paparazzi, wanted to be left alone. In fact, I believe there's a sign in front of his house that says, "Please leave me alone." I believe that's a sign in front of his house, which is a very Toriyama. It might sound rude to you, man, but it's not rude. When you're a celebrity at that level, people want to come through. People want to come through. Obviously, I'm still going to produce content, and I will still, whenever we find out where the franchise goes going forward, and who's going to take over, whether it be Iyoku, Toyotaro, a combination of the two, the Dragon Room, Capsule Corp Tokyo most likely. When we get that information, of course I'll tell you, but right now, I think the best thing for us to do is kind of remember what this man gave us, bro. You can't deny that some of the friendships that we've made that have lasted us our whole lives spawned from talking about Dragon Ball. That is a fact. There are people I have been in relationships with, both romantic and just friendships, where we have bonded over Dragon Ball. In a couple instances, they were girls that had never even seen Dragon Ball. and we saw the entire series all the way through, and it was great memories. It was great memories to this day. You know, meeting people at conventions. It's so There are so many aspects of my life that have been affected by this man for the better, and it literally changed my life. If it wasn't for Dragon Ball, I would have never gone to Japan, visited Japan, and actually like bought Dragon Ball stuff over there, of course. I would have never met so many people. I would have never experienced so many things, had memories. I got pictures of it all. And I know many of you have your stories, so please feel free to leave comments down below with your story of what Toriyama has meant to you. And he wasn't a perfect person. Nobody is. Obviously, the dude is human. But I think as a society, man, we got to start forgiving each other, dude. And I'm not just saying this because Toriyama passed away. I felt this way for a long time, and I've said it in other parts of the fandom. I've said it on streams. We got to start forgiving each other, man. We got to start, really loving one another and appreciating the time that we have. I don't know what else to say. But thank you. I want to thank Toriyama Sensei himself for the memories, for the entertainment, for the years and years and years of work he's given us. Not just Dragon Ball Slump, but also Dragon Quest, Blue Dragon, Tobal, all the different manga he's produced, Pola and Roid, Kenosuke. There's so many stuff this guy's put together. Dragon Boy, Tongpu. There's so much. And it's changed my life. It's changed many of yours, and that's a good thing.